Hey everyone, Omar here. Welcome back to the channel where I've got a new episode every Wednesday, but today I pushed this week's episode to next week. It's like 3:30 a.m. And the reason why this topic is popping up today is because I see a fresh round of just really aggressive advertising to kind of get photographers to sign on with these companies. The Uber-fication of photography is something that's been going on for a couple of years now. I remember one of the first ads I saw maybe 6-7 years ago. Relatively new concept at the time for the photo space at least. And surprise, surprise, the compensation structure really hasn't changed much. I know it seems tempting to take a couple of gigs with these companies because, oh, how else do I get clients? I don't know. You're better off reaching out to your own network and seeing who needs a photographer, because even one cheap job in your network will probably net you the same amount of money as working anywhere from 8 to 10 of these gigs. And that's if your prices are bottom barrel low to begin with. So you can imagine how bad these are. There are a ton of different companies. You might have heard a couple of these company names. Some of them are regional, but there's Snapper, there's Shoot with 2 T's, Perfocal, Book a Photographer, Lens Drop. They're just too many of them nowadays. They're all terrible and they're all predatory. Because they're all the same, I'm not going to go down the full list, and I'm going to show you exactly why it's a bad deal and why it's a bad idea for anyone, even a newbie, to get started here, because they do have some pretty strict requirements. So I'm going to pull this off an ad I saw last night, and that's what I'm like, look, I gotta get up early and just knock out this video real quick. This one is for a company called Shoot, again with 2 T's, whatever. They gotta be out now. Yeah, they're out in New York. Surprise, surprise, they just spam Craigslist because that's where people who typically don't know how to market themselves go looking for work. This will give you a quick look into what the average compensation structure is, but also check out the requirements, and we're going to do a little math here. We aggregate demand and also provide opportunity for B2B session. The B2B thing is the only thing that almost makes sense, but the thing you have to know about working with corporate clients is that they do not want to pay. So the relationship is really hard to build when they're already shopping for bottom barrel prices, because the only thing marketing departments and execs ever care about is how can I get as much work as possible for as little as possible. And they're also typically the same companies that'll say, oh, we want a photo intern or social media intern or any type of intern, anyone they can milk for the most amount of labor and pay the least amount of money. Unless you have a strategy where you can kind of scoop those guys up afterwards. And I don't know if they have a non-compete clause or something along those lines either, so that's something to keep in mind, and we'll touch on that a little later as well. But that is probably like the biggest highlight, I would say. We act as your booking, marketing, and customer service platform. We'll get into that. We offer 51% of all net gallery sales, which is horrible, and net gallery sales are going to be digital products. People pick whatever they download, so I don't see how there's a charge there unless they're going to start nickel and diming you for like hosting and download fees and platform fees or whatever the case is. And net is the smaller number. Just remember, there's like the gross, and the net is the money that you capture. Just keep that in mind for anyone new. And this is the part where the wording is important. We guarantee a minimum of $100 per active shooting hour. For one active hour of shooting equals 2 30-minute sessions equals $70 for active shooting plus $30 for light editing. I don't even know what light editing is. Are you just raising the shadows on everything? For 1/2 of an active hour of shooting equals 1 30-minute session, $35 for active shooting plus $15 for light editing. Now you have to remember that you're an independent contractor here, so not only does this $35 an hour not reflect what you actually get after taking taxes and everything out, it's you have to file it yourself at the end of the year as a 1099, and if you do other freelance stuff, you really should be doing quarterly taxes. This is like predominantly for my United States audience, by the way. So really, it's closer to like $24, $25 an hour. And then light editing is a nonsense phrase to me. I don't know what light editing means. You're either going to edit the photos or you're not. Maybe it means you're doing it in Lightroom or Capture One and not Photoshop, but that's still software that you have to own and maintain a subscription for, which isn't factored into this. Now, because of this pricing, just so you know, if somebody 2 hours away books a half-hour session, that is all you're getting paid for, the half-hour session. None of these companies pay for travel, toll, or anything like that. But depending on their business model, they'll either try to get you to take a job, or if it's like Snapper, they will just assign you a job and say you have to take care of this. Otherwise, similar to like Uber ratings and stuff, you get docked, but it's not from the customer, it's from their side where they go, oh, you're getting penalized because you refuse this job that pays $30 an hour that's 2 hours away. Totally and completely ridiculous, and now I think it's starting to paint a picture for everyone here. Let's get into the part that rubs me the wrong way. Maybe it's just because like I really like camera gear or something. And all of these requirements are pretty consistent with everyone, by the way. Some of them even say you have to have specific lenses as well, like the Trinity lenses, which is so much more ridiculous than even these requirements are. But anyway, let's get into it. So 1, you must have excellent camera technical skills, meaning you can't actually be a beginner. It's unlikely you're going to be shooting in program auto or any of the priority modes. You have to know how to shoot manual right out the gate. And if you know how to shoot manual, you're already overqualified for something like this. Next thing is you must be proficient with client direction and communication. So not only do you have to be a camera expert, but you also have to be able to give directions. You have to be able to pose direction, not only for individuals, but also for groups, because a lot of these gigs are for groups. Must be proficient with Adobe Lightroom Classic / similar software, which means you have to maintain a subscription. That's a couple $100 a year, and that's something that you have to maintain on your own. Must be willing to provide excellent customer service, so now suddenly you're their employee. You're representing their company even though you are not their employee. Must be able to keep consistent communication with management. Again, that's another weird thing. If you're a contractor, you give me the job, I execute it, I give you deliverables, and you pay me. That's the entire relationship. And here's where it gets even more ridiculous for $35 with no travel pay or anything. Must be willing to shoot in inclement weather, which means that your stuff needs to be weather sealed, which we'll get into shortly. And lastly, must be experienced and comfortable working with families and children. Now, if you thought that was ridiculous, which it is, wait till you see the equipment requirements. First off, you must own a professional grade DSLR / mirrorless camera. Insane, because we know those aren't cheap. So let's take a quick look into what a basic kit will look like. I'm not going to get crazy in depth with this. I'm just going to pick something that fulfills the requirements that you can pick up at Best Buy. So we're going to go with the Fujifilm X-T5 and the 16 to 80 kit lens. Good combo, weather sealed, because we saw earlier you have to shoot in inclement weather, so this is weather sealed. 1680 is the 24-105 equivalent in the Fuji ecosystem. It's a little more, it's like 24 to 120. But ultimately, this is what you're looking at. So $2,200 without tax or shipping or anything like that. Right out the gate, you have to already own this on top of all the other skills that they listed earlier. Plus you got to buy the SD cards and extra batteries and charge kits and whatever the case is. So let's get back to the requirements now. No crop sensors. APS-C. So this is like a really odd thing to me because I shot professionally for about 7 years on crop sensors. You know what? Let's finish the requirements first, then we'll get into like pricing a camera out for this. Full frame cameras preferred, which they said no crop sensor. Okay, like I don't get that. So full frame cameras preferred, no crop sensors. So I guess you can either get a micro four thirds or a medium format camera, but neither one of those are preferred. I don't know who wrote these. Camera must be greater than or equal to 24.2 megapixels to apply. So they're giving you some pretty modern standards. If you got a Canon 1DX, sorry, no good. Not a professional camera. Must have properly weatherized equipment. Okay. So with these constraints, let's go take a look at what like a beginner would pick up. And for someone to have, let's get rid of that Fuji. For someone to be able to fulfill those requirements of weather sealing, full frame, and at least 24 megapixels, well, 24.2 megapixels. Realistically, you got two off-the-shelf options. The first one is a Canon R8 with a 24-50 kit lens. That's what I would call the budget option. It looks like Unique Photo has it for sale right now for $1,500. Normal price is $1,700 for the kit. Still need an SD card, still need other batteries. The thing is with the R8 is that it's weather resistant, not weather sealed. So if you have like wet fingers, you're okay. If there's a little drizzle, you're okay. If you get caught in the downpour, that's probably gonna mess up the camera. I also don't think that lens that comes with it is weather sealed, so no matter what you do, that it's not good. Do not shoot with this outdoors. This one also doesn't have a mechanical shutter, like mechanical first curtain, so if you're shooting sports for some reason with one of these gigs, it's just not going to work out too well. There'll probably be a lot of rolling shutter. I haven't personally used the camera, but that's typically the case. But yeah, this is a less expensive version of the Canon R6 Mark II, which also... The R6 Mark II, effectively the same camera, has a better EVF. It's got actual weather sealing, not weather resistance, and it's got a mechanical shutter, and it has IBIS. A lot of like premium features that are missing from this one here, but we're not looking to maximize, I guess, the spend. I would at least go with a 24-105 on this, but let's price out the R6 Mark II since, again, you can walk into a Best Buy and buy one of these right off. right off the shelf. So the Canon R6 Mark II with a 24-105 kit lens. That's a pretty standard like kit Canon sells. Right now on sale for $3,099. Normal price is $3,599. This is a pretty good camera. We call these prosumer cameras because they're like professional consumer cameras. You can shoot in log with this one too. I think this one also shoots in HDR if I'm not mistaken. 12 frames per second. Like, this is a really good camera. The other one is the replacement of the EOS R essentially, which was Canon's first RF camera that released way back in 2018. And that's actually when I decided to jump ship to Fuji because they had video features that I needed that they just didn't provide at the time. So let's assume these things aren't on sale and you buy everything else that you need. You're anywhere from $2,000 to about $4,000 in the hole just from buying the camera, lens, cards, and a month access of Adobe Lightroom. So just a quick frame of reference, if you buy the R6 Mark II kit and you're equipped just to show up there, you have to do 114.28. So 115 of these $35 sessions in order to pay for that camera kit. And if you go with the Canon R8, which again, technically does not meet the requirements. I don't think they're really going to know that though. But if you go with the Canon R8 kit, inferior body, inferior lens, you still have to do 58 shoots in order to pay that off, which is more than one shoot a week in order to pay for the price of the camera. Not a good deal for you. And this is, again, I have to stress this, on top of all the professional skills you have to have on top of owning the equipment. Your ability to be able to direct people when they're posing, be able to turn edits around in 48 hours, be able to drive to wherever it is uncompensated, and all of that for anywhere from $35 to $70 pre-tax, and you have to file those taxes yourself. And remember, no benefits or anything too. We'll touch a little bit on that a little later as well. So Omar, of course, you're a working professional. You probably hate this stuff. What about people who may like it? Well, let's go take a look at Reddit, any random thread, and see what people's experience were with one of these companies. I'm going to take a look real quick. I found a thread made by someone who actually booked someone from Snapper, which is probably the most popular service on this list. And you have a couple of the photographers who chimed in, so let's check it out. Snapper bookings, the worst booking experience of my life. I'm planning a proposal this Saturday and booked a photographer 3 weeks ago for 11/11 at 5 p.m. I found out on Friday that my photographer had a wedding at 6 p.m. and could not make the appointment time I requested. Since then, I've had 3 photographers cancel on me. It's now 4 days until my proposal and I have no photographer and I've heard nothing from customer service. This is the worst app I've ever dealt with. If you are considering hiring a photographer, please do not use Snapper. This is an awful service and I'm upset with my experience. Do not use Snapper. Immediately, first comment, use shitty websites, win shitty prizes. Snapper is like going to Walmart and expecting Whole Foods. That comparison isn't even right, in all honesty. It's a lot worse than that. This is what happens when you book the lowest price service. On the other hand, the photographer should never have accepted the booking. I actually agree with that. I'll admit that I accept shoots through them during the pandemic when my regular clients weren't comfortable shooting. Photographers are assigned bookings randomly by the Snapper scheduling team / software. If they refuse or cancel it, they are punished via a point system and ratings reduction. There is no choice to accept a booking. Consider their abysmal setup. This causes a lot of scheduling issues. I did DoorDash and real estate shoots for them during the pandemic as well. SucksOP got sucked into their trap. They will do anything to not refund money except actually have good customer service. I did quite a number of Snapper shoots during the pandemic. It kept me afloat, but it certainly didn't help doing cheap shoots. Feel that. It was filler work. They lost the DoorDash contract eventually. Actually, I can tell you they still have it, but it might be region specific. As a photographer that worked for Snapper, avoid them at all costs. They pay the photographer shit, so most photographers will always prioritize another shoot over them based strictly on that. You're going on Snapper to cheap out on a photographer. Unfortunately, that also means you're doing that at a great risk and they might cancel for something else. Very true. Very similar to how anyone driving for Uber or Lyft will just put their phone into airplane mode if they decide they want to go home and do something else. Which, by the way, for anyone who does drive Uber and Lyft, that's not going to affect your rating, so you're good to go in case you ever have to reject something but don't want it to work against you. Snapper is not good. It's not a service that a lot of real pros use because it's not conducive to the sort of fees real pros need to charge, and it takes 30% of the cut. So there's a good chance you end up booking a pro who is just someone who happens to own a camera and has more aspirations than professionalism. For the wedding, I'd recommend looking around for real experienced pros in your areas. Definitely don't want to have any mishaps on wedding day. That is already a hard enough process for most people. You get what you pay for. Sorry. Snapper bleeds their photographers dry, and guess what? It was always a backup for me. If another client reached out and wanted the same time paying my regular rate, I'd cancel the Snapper booking. Sucks to admit, but they take 50% of what you pay for themselves and the other 50% for their photographer. They did not treat their photogs well. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm not surprised at all. As you can see, they've got a reputation among people who have actually done work for them. I still work for them as a photographer and I hate every second of it. I only do it because the company's partnership with DoorDash means I get semi-consistent shoots on top of my own personal freelance shoots, and the pay with DoorDash is somewhat decent now. This is only after years of them paying only $46.49 USD for a shoot, which is nothing. It's absolute garbage. They are super predatory, force photographers into jobs they don't want, punish them for canceling or rejecting them, even if it's done way in advance. They also ask for way more than they're actually paying for, so professional photographers will always prioritize their own paid work and clients over Snapper. Especially for weddings and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to settle being paid $497.41 USD minus 30% for a 10-hour wedding shoot when the average going rate for the same thing in my area is $2,000 USD. If I'm going to spend the amount of time and effort on something, I want to be paid its worth. My value, you get what you pay for. If you're going to cheap, expect to get cheap. It'll also screw over their clients knowing this. They'll take your money and make sure you won't get a refund at all costs, even forcing photographers to redo things for no pay or be punished. Customer service is also absolute dog shit. If that didn't convince you that this was bad enough, let's go over the pitfalls of this type of work that a lot of gig economy workers actually share with these different platforms that treat them as employees but don't give them any of the benefits of being employees as well. Number one is inconsistent income. Being a photographer, being a self-employed photographer in general, is already inconsistent income until you get clients to sign retainer packages or something along those lines. This is actually a lot worse because it's low pay, and then when you're off peak season, it's low pay and really inconsistent work. And that reduces your ability to plan financially. And I'm not talking about like trips or anything. I mean like paying your bills, paying rent. I saw a couple of other posts of photographers who actually had to travel and pay toll, and working the job and delivering the edits didn't even cover the travel costs for them. The second thing is that your work becomes undervalued. You saw the requirements there. You have to know how to pose, direct, you have to know how to communicate, you have to be able to do customer service on behalf of the company that's contracting you. You have to know how to edit on top of all this stuff. It's not over and you're not like just uploading the raws. You have to do the edits and deliver the edits yourself within 48 hours. And a lot of new photographers struggle right off the bat with low paying jobs. And when I say a low paying job, I mean covering something for like $250 to $500. And you also have to remember at the end of the day that unless you're taking this as cash payment, which isn't an option for any of these services, you still have to pay your 33 to 40% tax rate on this stuff, and you have to file it on your own. Otherwise, you're gonna get a fun little letter from Uncle Sam saying, hey, you owe this stuff plus interest. Now, the third point is a result of the first two, of inconsistent work and undervalued work, and it's that you're going to get overworked and burnt out. If you're doing client communication, driving, photo shoot, post-processing, and making sure that your $2,300 to $4,000 camera kit is taken care of during the shoot, like you don't drop it or anything like that, assuming everything goes well with it afterwards, and you're taking home $35 for all that effort, it's really going to start not feeling worth it really fast. And because there's no like actual process where you build a relationship with a company or anything, this is just highly competitive. It's just based on whoever's available. So it's not like putting in any extra effort is going to give you any kind of like favor or higher rates or anything with the company itself. The best you can hope for is slide your business card to the people, although some of them do have stipulations against this, and see if they'll just book you on your own on the side later for another gig. Another thing worth mentioning is that for all of these jobs, you actually can't display any of this work on your portfolio. So if you think you're going to do a couple of these really cheap jobs just so you have paid work to show on your website, they will actually sue you for that. So on top of all this, you literally have nothing to show for it other than the $35 you get paid for, you know, that shoot that took you a couple of hours to wrap up from start to finish. Another pitfall is that you never actually learn how to market yourself and you become very reliant on the platform. And that's always a bad thing. You guys see the national lawsuits against Uber and Lyft right now. They're lobbying hundreds of millions of dollars to keep things the way they are. But as time progresses, the drivers who actually built the companies out are now stuck working for these companies unless they go and get their TLC licenses. And now all of their income is reliant on these platforms, and none of it is consistent whatsoever. Matter of fact, More Perfect Union did a really good video on this recently, and I'll link it in a card right here just for you to check out because it's a trickle-down effect. Uber and Lyft are the largest gig economy platforms in the country, so anything that you see them doing, others are probably trying to get away with more since the heat isn't on them right now. On top of all that, you're not actually growing as a photographer, and they really put you at a disadvantage by saying they're only paying for natural light shoots. Sometimes if you're shooting something indoors and stuff, natural light isn't really an option. And if you're shooting outdoors, if it's dark outside or if it's in the middle of the light and you don't bring any lights, those photos are just not going to turn out good, and you're the one who's going to get dinged for it, not the company. You also really don't have any creative control over these, so this is not something where you can contact the clients ahead of time, plan out shoots, plan out essentially what you're going to do throughout the day or the event, or what it is that they're looking for specifically. You actually find that out right when you get there. So you showing up there going snap, 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 and then going back home does not really contribute to your growth and development as a photographer either. And if you have no professional growth and you're getting underpaid and your aspirations were to eventually become a professional photographer and make a living off this stuff, this is like the biggest deterrent to that. And while a lot of photographers have a scarcity mindset of, hey, less photographers the better, that's not true. The more people in the space, the larger the industry actually gets, because then everyone else is going to see their competitors or friends or family or their enemies getting professional photo shoots, and they're going to say, hey, I want that too. Scarcity mindset, horrible thing to have in the creative space. Make sure to like and subscribe. I just wanted to put this out because it looks like they're doing a really hard push before the holidays to get a bunch of new photographers wrapped up into these scam organizations, and I want to give everyone a heads up and make sure that you don't fall for that. Reach out to your personal network, tell people you're doing cheap shoots to build up your portfolio for $250, and $250 is a cheap shoot. At the very least, you'll start building out your relationship with potential future clients. You'll get your referrals directly to you, not to these weird platforms that'll just rob everyone involved. They'll start referring you to their network, not these random platforms. And because you're building those relationships, someone may actually hire you to a point where you actually start planning shoots, and that's going to help you grow professionally. You'll start learning how to market yourself, which is also how you're going to grow professionally. And hopefully all these companies will just go down the drain. That is how you build a career, not through these crappy platforms. Again, my name is Omar. I got a new episode every Wednesday, and I'll catch you at the next one.